and welcome to Billy Liemacher Bicentennial Park. We are celebrating a grant today. It's a Canadian National Eco-Connections grant administered by America in Bloom, and America in Bloom has two representatives here today that are going to speak. But I'm Rita Renwick, and I'm chair of the City of Joliet's Tree Advisory Board. We have worked over the years with our city arborist, Jim Tiber, trying to improve the green structure of our infrastructure of our city. There's gray infrastructure and there's green infrastructure, and Jim's pretty much has inspired us to do a lot of the greening of Joliet, and this project is just one of the items that we're working on, one of the projects. We had in this, for this project, about 18 volunteers who spent over 100 hours working on the project. We've had great cooperation with people at Lori and Deanna at Bicentennial Park. We've had people working with us from JJC, from the University of St. Francis, somebody who was very active in the Illinois Native Plant Society, people who were employed professionally by the Forest Preserve District. So we had a really good little group of core people, and we had people on our tree board too, who Mary Schoenheider is here, one of our members. And just, we had a woman who walked by one day when we were working and joined us in the afternoon to plant, and even brought a tent so that we wouldn't bake in the sun. So it was pretty neat. We have other people here with us today. We have Mayor Bob Odekirk. We've got Laura Kunkel, who is the Executive Director of America in Bloom. Marvin Miller, who's the Treasurer of America in Bloom. We have Pat Mudron, and we have Joe Clement, who are our city councilmen. And we welcome all of you today. So I think we'll just get started, and we'll have Laura Kunkel go first.
Thank you, Rita. It's a pleasure to be here today. As Rita mentioned, I'm Laura Kunkel. I'm the Executive Director of America in Bloom. We are nationally headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. That is where I call home. So it's a pleasure to get to come to Joliet and see the tremendous work that you are doing here. I've learned a lot over the years about Joliet's green, all the greening that you're doing, and Jim, I'm blown away by how much you do. And then today to get to see what the volunteers are, the magic that's happening in Joliet from the volunteers. It's really exciting. America in Bloom has been around for 20 years. We believe that flowers, plants, trees, and shrubs can create beautiful and vibrant communities, that heritage preservation is really important even as we look to the future, that environmental efforts are critical as we try to protect our natural assets, and that exciting things can happen through community engagement and volunteerism, and we're seeing that with this project. This is the third grant that we have awarded to Joliet on behalf of CN. And it is a real honor to do that because we know that of the tremendous work that you do. I never have to worry about you guys and your grants. You always follow through, and we're quite grateful for that. CN, when they came into the U.S. market, they wanted to replicate a grant program that they have up in Canada. So they looked at all the nonprofits across the country, and we're quite honored that they selected America in Bloom to administer the grant program on their behalf. So we began in 2014, and we've been in nearly 80 communities so far doing these types of projects. And it's very exciting for us to get to see CN's money at work and to see how these projects are helping make beautiful and thriving communities. Unfortunately, CN cannot be here, but they did want us to extend their congratulations and thanks to you for your great work. They are a Canadian company, but they're not really sitting up there in Canada not worrying about us. They actually ask often how the grant projects are going. So I'm really excited I can go home tomorrow and report back on the tremendous project here in Joliet. I mean, that's a lot of work. And I'm so impressed with what you're doing here. So on behalf of America in Bloom, I want to congratulate you and thank you for all that you're doing. And now I'd like to introduce Marvin Miller. Marvin is the treasurer of the board of directors, so he's going to sign that check that you're going to get. So that's always good to have the guy signing the check. He is also, and I think it's equally important, if not more so, he's also the chair of our grant review committee. We only give out 10 grants a year. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of communities along the CN rail lines, as far north as northern Minnesota down through Chicagoland into Mississippi and Louisiana. So you can imagine how many grant applications we get every year. So Marvin leads our committee in selecting 10 projects that we wish to fund every year, and that's really tough to say no to some really incredible projects, but we're really glad to be able to say yes to Joliet. So I would like to introduce Marvin Miller.
Thank you, Laura. I want to say I too am very impressed with what I see behind me. It's really great to see a garden revitalized, and that in itself is enough. One of the things that I always like to talk about is the power of plants, and America in Bloom was started 20 years ago plus. Basically replicating a program that was in Canada, Communities in Bloom, and a program that we've seen in a number of European countries. Britain in Bloom, in France they call it Ville Villager Fleuri, and a number of other countries that also participate in a European program called Entente Florale. And so what all of these programs have in common is they talk about the power of plants. And when we look at the power of plants, at least as we've written about it here in the States, we group all of the benefits of plants into three categories. And I think it's worth taking a minute or two to talk about those. The big group of benefits is certainly the environmental area. And we all know that we begin with oxygen and we can go through to pollution control, whether it's wind, rain, noise pollution, or whatever. A lot of stabilization, soil erosion is part of that, and so the list of environmental benefits is really long. One of the areas that we talk about are the economic benefits. And if we look at the economic benefits, we certainly talk about the fact that plants can attract people for tourism reasons. They can attract them to shopping districts. They can certainly help property values increase, and that results in changes to the tax base, and mayors typically like that quite a bit. So that's the economic benefits area. Probably in the pandemic, the third area, which is the psychological, sociological, health and well-being category of benefits, has gotten a lot of the attention. And certainly we can talk about plants and how they revive the spirit, how they help people cope, how people have, and we've seen it during the pandemic, just get out in nature and enjoy a little peace and quiet, a little part of nature, and the revitalization that nature can do to the person. And I think that's an area that has really gotten a lot of attention in the last 18 months of the pandemic, and certainly an area that I think parks in general are very appropriate. We have a lot of mayors that we visit in the cities that talk about having a park within a 10-minute walk of every residence, and that is an important aspect of that community or another community. So I think when we think about this whole health and well-being area, we certainly see the restorative nature that plants can provide. And in that regard, I think that's a big part of why the industry of horticulture really wanted to have the America in Bloom program established here in the States, and to carry on the work that really began in Europe right after World War II, when people were trying to revitalize their spirit, if you will, after the war. So I think we need to congratulate Joliet on taking that to heart and really running with it in a very big way. So we're very happy to be here, and want to congratulate the city on all of its efforts in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. I will say that when we were out here The planting and the weeding was pretty therapeutic, and it was nice to be around other people in an outdoor setting where we didn't have to worry so much about being together. So it was quite a good effort. I always think that my husband and I chose to move here 49 years ago after looking at all of the communities around, and we chose Joliet. I mean, first of all, there were huge elm trees on our street, and we loved that, but also the city had character. I mean, it just seemed like some of the other cities around just weren't unique enough for us, and we just really loved Joliet. And honestly, I mean, I love the bridges even though they give us, and we're the size of, we're a city that, sure, we have challenges, but we also, I think, have endless opportunities here. There's always more that we can do to make the city better, and we have so much to work with that I think I hope anyway, other citizens feel the same. Otherwise, why do they live here? They should. And this park, to me, has a rebirth. I came down here and it was 95 degrees this summer, and people were sitting in benches along the river in the shade, and the breeze was blowing, and I thought, this is really a beautiful place. And I think not enough people come down, and we're hoping that now that we put these pollinator gardens in, and it'll be an educational project also, because we've labeled all the plants, and it will evolve over time. I think we'll add more. Some of them will spread, and we'll be labeling more. We might add to it. But another nice thing is, because it's educational, CN and the city paid for a beautiful sign, and I'm going to unveil that. And that will be part of the educational effort down here, and hopefully we'll get more volunteers also. So thank you all, and I'm going to show you what this sign looks like. Anybody else want to help unveil it? Mayor? Sure. We'll just pull it back. Yep, pull it off. So it talks about what's in the garden, and it talks about native plants and what they can do for us, how insects use the plants, and I mean, it's great for the ecosystem. In fact, the other day in the Ohio horse mint over here, something was rustling in the leaves, and I thought, oh no, what is that? Well, it was a praying mantis that was about 3 inches long, and I thought, okay, the first big insect that I've seen in the flowers. I'm hoping there will be butterflies. We probably planted about 100 milkweed plants over here also. Sullivan's milkweed and swamp milkweed. They're not common, the common milkweed that spreads a lot, but they're great milkweed plants. So that'll be part of the city's work to get habitat for monarch butterflies. So we're very excited. And America in Bloom had a symposium in the sky a few weeks ago, and one of the people said, the better your city looks, the more excitement you generate within the city. And I really think that's true. So that's one of our main goals. Jim, do you want to talk a little bit? You want to go to the...
Thank you. Really quick, I just want to thank Rita for the hundreds of hours she put into this project, and not just this year, but the last 2 grants in the past. If it wasn't for Rita, this wouldn't happen. It's tough when you're one person and you're trying to get these things through and complete them. She did a great job organizing the volunteers. We had a couple summer helpers this year, which really helped out. So I want to say thanks to the summer help also. But what it comes down to is mayor and city council, supporting these projects and allowing me to apply for these grants, and knowing that there's going to be a lot of involvement. I'm not going to say that this isn't part of my job description. It is, and it's filling out grant information and filling out the forms, applying for them. I didn't realize there was only 10 awarded. Is that every year? So it's a big honor, especially this year. It was tough. There was a lot to do. We're not finished. As you can see, there's still some weeds on the one side. We're going to clean them all out. But again, I would really highly like to thank the mayor and the city council for supporting this now, before, and into the future. They know that it means a lot to the city residents to green up the city, to keep it beautiful, to add the flowers. I think that's probably why they reach out to me personally when there's a tree-related issue or a flower issue or a plant issue, knowing that I'll do what I can to get it done and trying to turn things around, beautify the city and add to it. Again, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
So now we would invite you to walk over and see the labels we have on plants and take a little walking tour if you are so inclined. Thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate your interest. I'm Rita Renwick. I'm chair of the City of Joliet's Tree Advisory Board, and I'm here today at Billy Liemacher Bicentennial Park with...
Jim Tiber. I'm the city arborist for the city of Joliet.
We're here celebrating the near completion of a grant that we received from Canadian National. They have a program called Eco Connections from the Ground Up. And of course their rail line goes from Canada all the way through the U.S. They give 10 grants a year to communities where their rail lines pass through. And we were one of the 10 cities that received a grant this year for $25,000. Our project name was Renew and Rediscover Your Parks. And so we chose as a main site the Bicentennial Park. And Jim, maybe you can explain some of what we did.
Well, I think our main goal was to bring the community back together after last year's kind of tearing the communities apart in regards to what happened. So we designed or came up with the idea to have the pollinating garden at Bicentennial Park, allowing individuals to come down here to walk the park, to see the plantings. We also did put our signs up describing what plants are what and what they're going to do, what they're going to provide for the park. We planted over about 3,000 different plugs, probably around 300 potted plants, 1 gallon pot plants. And we're probably going to put in another couple thousand plugs in this area, especially along the bluff area. We haven't completed 100%, but we're still in the process of weeding out some of the trees and other weeds, other non-native and invasive species that really do not help this area out. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll pretty much complete what our goal was and move forward into next year and see how everything looks, how it turns out. It should be pretty fascinating down here.
Right. We have big plans, and we are really working hard to make it happen. We've had about 18 volunteers work with us, and we'd welcome any more volunteers that we can get. We're weeding and planting. But, some of the project, we weren't sure that the area along the bluff at Bicentennial Park would have enough good soil to plant in. We started digging in and found out that a lot of the soil from on top of the bluff has washed down. So we have really a good system of soil that we could plant in.
Something that's probably going to every year. It just going to add.
They will grow and regenerate because they are perennials. They will come back every year. And I think about maybe 30 different species that we've planted. So hopefully we'll have blooms in all the seasons, which is essential if you're doing a garden and you're trying to attract pollinators, bees, butterflies, moths, insects, which make for a healthy ecosystem. And one of the unique things we did was to define each area with limestone that was from the old Silver Cross Hospital. So that is kind of a unique idea that we had, and Jim made that happen. Anytime we would face some kind of difficulty or a challenge to what we were trying to do, or think maybe this is unique and it isn't really unique when you look at other cities. But we are the third largest city in the state of Illinois. So, you know, we could do, I think, just about anything that we can think of to improve the city. And we shouldn't really look at a challenge as stopping us from doing it. Instead, we can embrace it and improve things. You want to talk about some of the trees we planted, Jim?
We planted over 70 trees. We have a few different varieties, service berries, red splendor crab apples, and redbud. We lined the whole tree line from one end, Jefferson Street, all the way to Western Avenue with redbud trees that will flower, have a nice flower blossom on it, and then we'll have our white blossoms with the serviceberry, and then another with those red splendors we'll have the reddish kind of a pink flower on that one also. So come springtime, it'll look incredible down here. We'll have multi-colors of flowers, and with all our pollinating plants, it's going to look incredible. We'll weed it as much as we can. We're not planning on using any herbicides down here. The one thing you want to do with a lot of these pollinating plants and reseeding plants, I think a lot of individuals have, especially residents at home, is they use a lot of herbicides, or they're maybe pulling the weeds up or rototilling around them. If you're herbiciding around these plants, you're not going to allow them to regenerate and reproduce, and they're just going to eventually die off, and you're not going to have that garden that you really were hoping to have. So we're going to try to eliminate using herbicides and spend quite a bit of time keeping it weeded. But once they take over, they should pretty much take over the area, and there'll be a lot less maintenance then.
We've also, as part of the grant, started a food forest at the very northern end of the Broadway Street Greenway, north of Ingalls Avenue. And it's kind of in the works project. Again, we outlined some of the areas, and we have asparagus there and rhubarb. We have pollinating plants, and we have raspberry bushes, and we have some strawberry. We're trying to add hazelnut and elderberry, and figs. We've got fruit trees there. We have a few fig trees. Kind of an experimental, trying to see what will work there. Pawpaw trees, right?
Persimmon, did you say
persimmon.
that? Mm-hmm. So we'll just keep adding to both areas and other areas. We're going to do a pollinating garden at Park District at Inwood. Actually, the soil was delivered there last week, and the Park District staff has then helped us in staging all that and leveling it all out. So it's actually ready to plant, and we have a few hundred plugs that we're going to install out there this week. And there's some talks about maybe going to a Plainfield Park District area, plant some stuff there depending on what's left in the grant funding, and hit or miss, we'll do a few other areas throughout the city.
Anyway, it's been a beautiful day out here, and we really would invite people to come down. We still have several weeks of nice weather, and these plants and flowers, many of them were planted July 1st, and they're blooming big time. Just come down and check them out, look at the names on them. We'll be putting an interpretive sign up later to show what's here and why you should plant native plants. It all helps our ecosystem, and you create a balanced environment for insects, birds, and so on. And it's very therapeutic to get out and weed and plant and see these plants, and they will come back every year because they are perennials. Thank you.
Thank you.